Let's be real for a moment. For many men, there's this underlining anxiety when it comes to oral sex. That nagging question in the back of your mind. Am I doing this right? Is she liking this? Is she faking it? Maybe you've experienced that awkward uncertainty of not knowing if she's genuinely enjoying herself or just being encouraging, right? Perhaps you felt frustration of giving your absolute all, only to sense that she's still not quite getting there. Today, we are diving into how to give absolutely earth shattering oral pleasure that will leave your girl breathless, trembling, and completely addicted to your touch. Welcome back to The Naked Connection. This is the show that supports driven men to reach sexual mastery and build deep connections. It's Kirsten, and before we get any further, please take a moment and hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss a single episode. Look, these concerns about oral are completely normal, but they can create a cycle where your own anxiety actually prevents you from being fully present and attentive, which is exactly what she needs from you in this intimate moment. What if I told you that there was actually a method that could completely transform your approach to oral? A method that isn't just about physical techniques, but also about understanding the psychology of your woman in a way that creates an experience so powerful that she'll be thinking about it for days afterwards. Today, I'm going to share with you the peak pleasure method, which is a 3-step approach that will revolutionize how you think about and actually perform oral sex. And I cannot help myself, but I'm throwing in a bonus technique as well. So stick around. This isn't just about making her feel good. It's about creating the kind of intensely memorable experience that deepens your connections and keeps her coming back for more. So, if you're ready to become the kind of lover that women fantasize about, stay with me and let's get some. In order to make these specific techniques masterful, let's first talk about the mindset that will separate you from being an average lover to being an exceptional one. The most common mistake that men make with oral sex is approaching it like they're completing a task. They focus intensely on getting her to orgasm as quickly as possible, treating it more like a challenge to overcome rather than an experience to savor. You see, female arousal and pleasure simply doesn't work that way. Women's bodies really respond to a gradual buildup of sensation, to a delicious tension of anticipation, to more of the rhythmic dance between intensity and relief. And while that might seem really annoying for all parties involved, it's simply reality. So, understanding this fundamental principle is going to be the key to creating truly powerful experiences together. I am a house girly. I love my EDM music, and it is a perfect analogy here. An incredible piece of music doesn't start at full volume with every instrument playing at once. It begins with subtle notes, gradually introducing new tracks, new instruments, new beats, new tones, building themes and variations that create these emotional peaks and valleys. And by the time the song reaches its crescendo and that beat drops, the entire audience is completely immersed in the experience and goes buck wild. I savor every beat drop. And oral sex works in the same way. It's not just about hitting the right notes, it's about composing an entire symphony of sensation that builds and intensifies over time. With that in mind, let's talk about this 3-step peak pleasure method that will completely transform how you give oral pleasure. All right, step 1, y'all, is all about setting up the physical environment for both of you to fully enjoy the experience without distraction or discomfort. For her, the traditional position of lying on her back, maybe with a pillow underneath her hips, is going to work wonderfully for most women. However, I want to spice this up for you. So, another excellent option is what you could call the relaxed butterfly. And this is where she's at the edge of the bed with her feet either on your shoulders or simply resting on the edge. And this position is going to offer her the freedom to adjust her hips more easily while giving you excellent access. For you, comfort is equally crucial. So if she's all comfy, cozy, and you're in some weird contorted position, this is not going to go very far. You're not going to enjoy yourself, and she's not either. So you can kneel with pillows beneath your knees, keeping those boys comfy. Or another option is beyond kneeling is going to be this side approach. So this is where you lie on your side perpendicular to her body. And this position is going to eliminate some of that neck strain and can really be maintained comfortably for extended periods of time. Another position is actually to have her position herself on a raised surface like a countertop or a table with proper cushioning, of course. And this is going to be the perfect height for you to actually be able to either stand or sit depending on the height that we're working with here. And this eliminates any strain on your back or your knees so that you can be comfortable as long as possible. Remember that discomfort is the enemy of presence. So whether either of you is distracted by physical strain, it's really going to pull attention away from the experience itself. Taking time up front to create your comfort is going to mean that you'll both be able to really be able to fully immerse yourself into this pleasure journey. The second step is all about taking a deliberate journey across her body that builds arousal systemically rather than just rushing to the final destination. Most men make the mistake of focusing exclusively on the clitoris right from the start. But imagine if someone began massaging your shoulders by immediately digging their thumb into your most tense pressure point with full force. It would be overwhelming rather than pleasurable, right? It might even make you more tight as opposed to soften and release the muscle strain. Same goes here. So instead, you want to think of her entire body as a landscape of pleasure waiting to be explored. Begin with areas that create anticipation without overwhelming sensation. The inner thighs can be incredibly responsive to light touches. So try using not just your tongue, but also your breath, letting that warm air flow across her sensitive skin. The lower abdomen just above the pubic bone is also another often overlooked erogenous zone that is going to help build arousal when you give it attention. And when you do move to her vulva, remember that the visual clitoris is just the tip of a much larger internal structure. So you want to start with gentle attention to her outer labia before gradually moving inward. So use the tip of your tongue initially because this is going to provide precision and a lighter sensation than the flat of your tongue. And as you notice signs of her increasing arousal, perhaps she's breathing deeper, maybe her hips begin to move subtly, or you notice that her skin is actually flushing, you can gradually increase more pressure and intensity. But this progression should happen over minutes, not seconds. A client once told me that when he started taking this approach of this gradual exploration, his girl said it was like being awakened from a pleasure coma. I mean, she hadn't realized how much of her body could be part of this experience until he took on this strategy. And another crucial element here is going to be consistency. Once you find a rhythm and a technique that generates this positive response, maintain it. Many men make this mistake of thinking that they need to constantly switch things up, keeping it fresh, keeping it new. Every few seconds, they're somewhere else, they're this, they're that. But this actually prevents her from building towards release. So you want it to be really rhythmic and consistent. Okay. Now we come to the third step, which really holds the real secret to creating this explosive, mind-blowing orgasm that is going to make her gasp for breath. And this is what we call the pleasure plateau method. And it's based on the principle of intentionally extending that pre-orgasmic state to create a much more powerful eventual release. And here is how it works. As you continue with the techniques from step 2 and you notice that she's becoming highly aroused, maybe her breathing is quickening, her muscles are tensing, her muscles are tensing. Maybe if you watch that episode on the vestibular bulbs, you've noticed that she's becoming engorged, that even the color of her labia are darkening and changing. Perhaps she's becoming more vocal. Maybe you'll recognize that she's approaching orgasm. Most men at this point would intensify their efforts, thinking, we're almost there, let's go. But here is the counterintuitive secret. Instead of pushing forward, you are going to maintain that exact level of stimulation, keeping her on what we call that pleasure plateau, that delicious state just before orgasm when sensation is incredibly intense. And when she reaches this plateau, rather than immediately increasing intensity to push her over the edge, continue exactly what you're doing for about 30 seconds. Then, briefly redirect your attention, perhaps to her inner thighs, to her entrance, other sensitive areas, before returning to the exact same motion and pressure that brought her to that plateau initially. You'll notice that she returns to that heightened state much more quickly than before. So allow her to ride that pleasure plateau again, perhaps for a little bit longer this time, before once again briefly redirecting your attention. And each time you repeat this cycle, her arousal builds higher and her sensitivity increases. By the third or fourth time you've gone through this, reaching this plateau, she'll likely be in a state of exquisite sensitivity. And this is when you maintain that consistent stimulation without further pauses, allowing her to experience an exceptionally powerful release. The physiological reason that this work is fascinating is that each time you maintain that plateau state, the blood flow to her genital tissue increases substantially. Nerve endings become more sensitized, and the pleasure hormones are building up in her system. And when you finally allow her to cross that threshold, all of that built up tension releases in a dramatically more intense way than it had if you had rushed straight to that orgasmic state. So one issue that sometimes arises during oral sex is that a woman can really feel disconnected or isolated from her partner. There's something inherently vulnerable about receiving oral pleasure. She can't see your face. There's limited body contact, and the focus is so intensely on one area that it can sometimes feel like an isolated physical experience rather than an intimate connection between two people. And this sense of disconnection can actually inhibit her ability to fully surrender to the pleasure, creating really a mental barrier to experiencing the most intense sensations that are possible. But there are several powerful ways that you can maintain and deepen your connection during oral. So first is to maintain physical connection beyond just your mouth. So you could rest one hand maybe on her stomach or her hips, or intertwine your fingers with hers. This ongoing touch really creates a physical anchor that reminds her of your presence and connection. Second, you can use your eyes, right? Periodically look up to maintain eye contact, and this momentary visual connection can be immensely intimate and grounding. Now, you don't have to stare. I'm like staring into the camera. You don't have to stare continuously, as this can really create some performance anxiety, but occasional eye contact reinforces the emotional connection between the two of you. And third, use your voice. Take brief moments to tell her how beautiful she is, how much you enjoy pleasuring her. Simply moaning or expressing your own enjoyment can create that auditory connection that really bridges the physical distance. So even though maybe you're physically not as connected, you can have that sound and that communication in various ways to elicit that sense of connection. Even simple phrases like, you taste amazing, or I love watching you enjoy this, can profoundly deepen the experience. Again, you can go back to that plateau phase, and as you shift your focus somewhere else, that's a great opportunity to invite in one of these phrases, or invite in tone, or make that eye contact. And one particularly effective technique is what I like to call the pause and connect. So, where every few minutes you pause briefly to move up her body. Maybe you kiss her on the cheek, kiss her on the neck, look into her eyes, or whisper something intimate really before returning to pleasuring her. These moments of reconnection can really help to integrate that intense physical sensations that she's being given by you with the emotional intensity. I had one client whose partner always felt disconnected during oral sex until they discovered that having him reach up to actually caress her breast while pleasuring her created that bridge of sensation that transformed the entire experience from feeling really isolating to feeling wholly connected. So remember, the goal isn't just physical pleasure here. It's creating an experience where she feels deeply connected to you, even as she's surrendering to intense sensation. Now, for the bonus technique that I promised. All right, so while you maintain this oral attention, try to incorporate gentle rhythmic pressure with your fingers just above her pubic bone, which where you can indirectly stimulate the internal structure of her clitoris. Alternatively, if she enjoys a little bit of internal stimulation during oral, you could incorporate some gentle penetration, maybe with a finger or two. You can use that come hither motion to stimulate the G spot area. The key here is really to synchronize these different forms of stimulation. So, when orchestrated correctly, this combination stimulates multiple pleasure pathways at the same time, creating a really synergistic effect that substantially is more powerful than any single form of stimulation alone. So, again, applying pressure on that pubic bone, maybe doing the come hither, a light amount of stimulation and penetration can go a long way. And think about the difference between hearing a single drum beat versus a full entire orchestra. I'm feeling very musical today, if you can't tell, but that is because both can be beautiful, right? Like that drum beat, it's got its thing, it's going on. But that full orchestra, ooh, the richness and complexity, it creates a much more immersive experience, which I know that you want to give and create. One more important note. Always check in about incorporating additional forms of stimulation rather than surprising her with them. So, some women might prefer purely external stimulation during oral sex, while others find the combination intensely pleasurable. You might even want to invite in a toy or something along the way, maybe a jade egg or using a vibrator or a dildo, whatever have you. Super fun to bring that in as well. I worked with a couple once who discovered that incorporating a small vibrator externally while he was focused orally on other areas created such powerful orgasms that she actually needed to develop techniques to maintain their intensity, which I think is a wonderful problem to have. And throughout all of these techniques, your ability to read and respond to her unique signals is absolutely crucial. Every woman experiences pleasure differently. So pay attention to your woman's specific response is going to be essential. Unfortunately, if it works for one, it doesn't work for all. And what works for her one day might not work for her the next. And I am so apologetic that is the experience that you are faced with, and also a fun challenge to overcome, depending on how you look at it. Now, some women are going to communicate verbally about what feels good, while others are going to express themselves more through body language. So, really learn how to read and watch for signs. Signs like changes in breathing patterns. Is it deeper? Is it faster? Or is the breath being held? This is going to often indicate building arousal. Muscle tension, especially in the thighs, the abdomen, and yes, the feet. Hip movements that either press towards you, which usually indicates more please, or pull away, which might mean that the sensation is too intense. Changes in vocalization, which might increase in volume, pitch, or frequency, are also going to be indicators that arousal is building. Skin flushing across the chest, the neck, or the face, her hands grasping the sheets or perhaps guiding your head. All of these things are silent or more physical indicators of what's really going on for her. And these cues are going to form a feedback system, helping you adjust your approach in real time. And when you notice positive responses, that's your signal to really maintain what you're doing rather than changing techniques. I really think of this attentiveness as similar to being a skilled dance partner. We've been talking about music. Let's talk about dance into that music. You're not performing solo. You're engaging in a dynamic exchange where her responses guide your next move and vice versa. This responsive attentiveness not only creates both that physical pleasure, but it also fosters this emotional connection that makes the experience truly intimate. And throughout all of these steps, stay deeply attuned to her unique responses, using her feedback to guide your approach. And this really works. And what makes this method so effective is that it really works with her body's natural arousal process rather than against it. These steps are about transforming oral sex from that mechanical act into an art form. You are an artiste. And her pussy is the canvas, okay? So one that creates the kind of pleasure that strengthens your connection and keeps the passion alive in your relationship. Remember, becoming skilled at giving pleasure isn't just about technique. It's about patience, attentiveness, and genuine desire to create an extraordinary experience for your partner. When you can approach oral sex with this mindset, you're not just giving physical pleasure, you're creating an experience of being truly seen, valued, and desired. And I think many men have unfortunately been in a place where they didn't get the best oral experience, and you know how that feels. Let's all work together here in making sure that everyone is up-leveling their oral game. And before we wrap up today's episode, I want to emphasize that developing these skills takes practice and communication. So don't be afraid to talk with your partner about what she enjoys both during intimate moments and outside of them. The most sexually satisfied couples aren't necessarily the ones that know the most postures or the techniques. They're the ones who communicate openly and approach their intimate life with curiosity, with playfulness, and a genuine desire to please each other. Remember, confidence in the bedroom comes from knowledge, practice, and genuine care for your partner's experience, not from pretending to know it all. Approaching each intimate encounter as an opportunity to deepen your understanding of her unique preferences is going to transform your sex life. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Naked Connection. If you found this valuable, please take a moment, hit subscribe to the show, and leave a review, leave a comment. Your support helps this community grow, and I am always honored to be a part of your journey towards deeper connection and sexual mastery. So until next time, this is Kirsten reminding you that great sex isn't just about technique, it's about connection. Let's get some. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of The Naked Connection. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss another episode. Trust me on this, your sex life and that special someone in your life will thank you for it. And if you really love the show, please take a moment and leave a 5-star review or a written review and let me know what you think. It would mean so much to me and this show. Until next time, happy connecting.